Hi everyone, and welcome to Ewe University. I'm Dr. Kelly. This past week we had finals and I finished reading papers and submitted my final semester grades Friday morning. Yesterday was graduation and I was up on stage reading all the students' names as they walked across the stage for the College of Arts and Sciences ceremony. You know, graduation is always so bittersweet because you're happy for the students to be moving on with their lives and going on to their adult careers. But it's also sad because they're leaving and in many cases you probably won't see them again. So I always enjoy going to graduation and celebrating with the students. Today I wanted to chat about a couple things before moving on to my knitting for this week. First, I wanted to show you my favorite way of storing mini skeins so that the yarn is ready to knit from. Maybe you're a person who is working on a sock yarn mini skein project like a Cozy Memories blanket. Here is the one by Georgie Nicholson that a lot of people are doing. It has all the little mitered squares made out of different leftover sock yarns, or I guess you could use any weight of yarn. Or maybe you're doing something like what people call Franken socks, where you make socks striped with all different leftover yarns. And here's an example in this pattern by Heather Sebastian. And a lot of people are doing this kind of project these days. So there are many people doing mini skein swaps to exchange leftover yarn with friends so they can sample different kinds of yarn, plus have special yarn from their friends in their project. Now myself, I'm not working on any mini skein projects, but I do regularly send out sets of mini skeins to friends just to add to their collection of yarns for their projects. So to make mini skeins, you can use a tiny nitty knotty like this one, which I showed on last week's video. And most mini skeins are around 40 grams or less. This particular one is 40 grams, and you can see how small it is compared to a regular skein of sock yarn, which is usually 100 grams. But the thing about these mini skeins is that they are in hank format, which is, this big circle of yarn, as you can see, so you can't knit directly from it in this format. What you need to do is wind the hank into a little yarn muffin using your ball winder, or just wind it into a ball by hand, and then you can knit from it. Well, for the past year or so, I've been wondering why put mini skeins into hank format, which involves an extra step, and then send them to your friend and they have to put it back into ball format before they can knit from it. And I got to thinking, why not just wind little mini yarn balls and put them in an egg crate? The yarn looks pretty, and the egg crate keeps the yarn balls in place and prevents them from rolling around and unwinding. So, you can, tip it upside down and they don't go anywhere. To send them to your friends, you can easily put this in a small box or maybe even a padded envelope. These egg crates are pretty sturdy. And the beauty of this is that not only do the yarn balls look lovely when displayed like this, but they're all ready to knit from. You can knit from the yarn balls right out of the crate. Now these little yarn nuggets this is what I call them, yarn nuggets. They're only around 10 grams each, and you could make them a little bigger if you wanted, but usually it seems like people doing these mini skein projects only need less than 10 grams to do like a mitered square for a blanket. So you don't even need something like this 40 gram mini skein. This is a pretty big mini skein. If you broke this down into 4 yarn nuggets, they would be plenty to do each a Franken sock stripe or a mitered square. Or what I often use them for is making contrasting heels and toes for socks. So if I have all my yarn nuggets wound up like this, I can see what colors I have and find one that goes with the socks that I'm making. So anyway, I just wanted to show you real quick how I've been packaging, storing, and sending out little yarn nuggets to friends or just keeping them for myself. Now for egg crates, what I've done is saved egg crates after we've used up all the eggs and then just washed them out and put yarn nuggets in them. Or this particular, these little clear ones like this, I got from Amazon, and I'll put the link to that below if you are interested in checking it out. The other item I wanted to show you is some cologne that I purchased from Sephora several months ago, and I got this because it's called Wool. And the brand is called Commodity. One thing I like about this is that it's appropriate for both men and women. It's not flowery and girly, but it's also not masculine. So it's a really nice combination, and no, it does not smell like sheep. It's always hard to describe a scent, but some of the notes that are listed for this cologne are vanilla, musk, bourbon, amber, cedar, apple, mandarin, and grapefruit. Now, I personally usually go for flowery scents, and this is not, but it's not super musky either. I really like it. According to the website, the style is cheerful, relaxed, and confident. And who doesn't want to smell like that? I thought this would be a neat gift for a knitter or something different to put in a swap or something to get for yourself. And this little spray bottle is a travel size, and it is 0.33 ounces or 10 milliliters. And it's $26 at Sephora. You can also get a larger bottle. And if you're interested in trying out different samples of Commodity fragrances, they have a nice kit of 10 unisex fragrances that includes wool, but also other scents like book and tea, which I've not tried, but I would love to. And this set is $26. I think these would be fun gifts for your wool-loving friends, your book-loving friends, your tea-loving friends. So if you're looking for something different for yourself or for a gift, you might want to try out this wool cologne by Commodity. And I'll include links below to the wool cologne as well as the sample kit with all the different fragrances in it. You might remember that for the past couple of weeks, I've been working on a pair of socks. And this is a project that I pulled out of hibernation and just needs to be finished. I've been really good at finishing a lot of UFOs this year, and up to this point, I had only cast on one new project all year, and that was the knee socks that I finished a few weeks ago. But I've really been itching to cast on a shawl lately. So I've actually put the sock project aside, and I cast on a new project this week. And the pattern is perfect for me right now. The pattern is the Oklet Shawl by Megan Goodacre, which is a free pattern on Ravelry. It is a triangular shawl with a stockinette stitch body. There is an eyelet spine down the middle, and then it has a pretty lacy border around the bottom edge. So here is my version of, or the beginning of my version of the shawl. The body of the shawl is a very easy 2-row repeat where you construct the stockinette fabric. I guess it goes like this, where you construct the stockinette fabric and perform all the increases. And that is just what I needed right now. I can work on it and not have to pay attention that much. I was looking for a simple but pretty shawl pattern because I've had a full schedule lately with finals and grading and everything, so I didn't have a lot of time to spend on a fussy, intricate pattern. And the other reason is because I wanted to show off this beautiful yarn that I'm using for the shawl. I showed this yarn in a previous video. I got it at a yarn shop a few weeks ago when I was in Chicago. And it is Gypsy Girl Creations fingering weight yarn. It is 100% superwash merino wool. The base is called Transitions, I'm sure because it's a gradient yarn. It's in the twisted loop colorway, which goes from a bright lime green to a dark teal to a deep purple. And right now I figure I'm about a third of the way through this skein or this ball, because it is transitioning from the lime green to the teal, and it is a pretty gradual transition. I'm really enjoying working with this yarn. I love the stitch definition. It is so beautiful. And I've been eager to get to the next color, and it's coming up really soon. For this project, I'm using a US size 5 needle, which is a 3.75 millimeter, and these are Haya sharps, and they have been a dream to work with on this project. So yeah, that is what I've done so far, and I'll keep you posted on how it's going. I'll probably work some more on the socks too, since I'm going to be on summer break starting this coming week. I thought I would take a few minutes here to answer a couple of questions that viewers have asked over the past several weeks. So first, Karen asked, could you discuss knitting socks with and without nylon? How do we compensate for no memory or limp legs? Okay, so first it depends on what kind of yarn you're making the socks with. If you're talking about making socks out of something like pure cotton or pure bamboo, then those would not be good choices for sock yarn, because by themselves, they have very little elasticity. So your socks would get stretched out and would never revert back to their original shape. In that case, you definitely would want some nylon in the yarn for its elasticity. But if you're talking about wool yarn, wool itself actually has excellent elasticity and memory, so nylon isn't necessary in wool yarn. The thing is that wool sock yarns generally have some nylon content for strength, not so much for elasticity or memory. I mean, pure wool yarn is by itself pretty strong, and as I said, it has good elasticity and resilience. Nylon has good elasticity too, but it's much superior to wool in strength and abrasion resistance. So with a wool-nylon blend in your yarn, you get the best of both fibers. The wool provides comfort, good moisture wicking, cushioning, and good memory to help the socks keep their shape. The nylon will add strength and resistance to abrasion and help the socks last longer. A while ago, I came across a blog post from Brit Knitter, who is a woman named Diane. And back in 2007, she did a little experiment testing out different sock composition. I love when knitters do real scientific experiments. So she actually knit 2 pairs of socks, and in one pair, she reinforced the heel and toe of the socks with polyester thread. Now, polyester, like nylon, is a very strong synthetic fiber. The other pair she left plain, so they were just constructed out of plain wool yarn. Now, she wore both pairs of socks for nearly 3 years before one sock got a hole in it. And which pair do you think got the hole first? The reinforced one or the non-reinforced one? Well, it was one of the non-reinforced socks that developed a hole first. So she concluded that the polyester reinforcement must have helped the socks last longer. But she also pointed out that both pairs of socks showed a lot of wear. But remember, the hole didn't happen until nearly 3 years of heavy wearing. I thought this was kind of interesting that Diane's experiment anyway showed that a synthetic fiber helped the socks last longer as compared to socks that were made out of wool by itself. Some other things to keep in mind are that strengthening socks can be done in other ways besides reinforcing the toes and heels or blending nylon with the wool fiber in the yarn. So one way you can handle this is first knit with a tightly spun yarn. Yarns that have a lot of twist will be sturdier and wear better, so they'll be less likely to get holes in them. Second, go down a needle size so that your knitting will have a denser, tighter gauge. Again, this will help the yarn be more durable and the socks will wear better and last longer. Third, you can use yarn made out of sturdier kinds of wool. Merino wool is very popular for sock yarn, and it's very soft and squishy. but softness generally translates into less durable. Now, you can still find nice feeling yarn that's less soft and more robust. One of my favorites for greater durability is BFL or Blueface Leicester. There are dozens of other sheep breeds whose wool is a bit sturdier than merino and would be good for making long-lasting socks. And fourth, you can use wool yarn that has been blended with mohair, silk, or bamboo. A viewer recently suggested mohair in the comment section of one of my videos, and I think that's a great idea. Mohair, silk, and bamboo are still natural fibers, but they're stronger than wool, so will help create a sturdy fabric. For example, mohair is about 1.5 times stronger than wool, and silk is around 4.5 times stronger than wool. So these will really add to the strength and durability of your socks, eliminating the need for nylon. So the bottom line here is that if you're using wool yarn for your sock making, you don't necessarily need nylon. Pure wool socks are just fine. But if you want a little more reinforcement or strength to help the socks last longer, you might want to look for wool yarn blended with a little bit of nylon or even mohair, silk, or bamboo. If, however, you are making socks using a fiber with little elasticity, like 100% cotton or 100% bamboo, then the memory issue becomes relevant. Fibers like cotton or bamboo will get stretched out and won't spring back to their original shape like wool does, so then you would have the problem of droopy legs on your socks. So in this case, it would be best to find some cotton or bamboo yarn that's blended with nylon or wool to give it that elasticity. Our second question today is from Tanya, and she wants to know about how to fix dye to yarn so it doesn't bleed. She said, I'm planning on doing a multicolored shawl and have a black and dark teal color that I soaked in cold water. Both continued to lose dye after several rinses. The very reputable dyer sent information that this is possible due to different water system pH. I remember you talking a lot about pH in the Wool Wash show. What can someone do to fix this at home? Now, I think this is an interesting question because of the issue of pH in the various tap water systems across the country or even around the world. Can this difference in pH affect the color fastness of your yarn? This is an issue that I'd never heard of or even thought of. And being a scientist, I'm naturally skeptical about claims like this, so I had to do a little research to satisfy my curiosity. So I was curious as to the pH of the municipal public water systems across the country. Now, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency does not regulate the pH level in drinking water. It is classified as a secondary drinking water contaminant whose impact is considered aesthetic, which means it affects the taste, odor, or color of the water, but it does not pose health problems to people who consume it. However, the EPA does recommend that public water systems maintain pH levels of between 6.5 and 8.5. I was unable to find data showing the pH levels of tap water in different areas of the U.S. However, everything I read about community water treatment plants indicates that adjusting pH levels is part of the water treatment process after removing contaminants from the groundwater or well water. So I don't have any reason to believe that tap water originating from a public water system would have a super high or low pH. I just don't think there's enough evidence to conclude that the reason a yarn is bleeding is because of the pH of the local tap water. So, all right, that is the pH issue. But the second part of Tanya's question had to do with how can someone fix the dye in yarn? Is there a way for an average person to do this in their home? And the answer to that is yes. It's easy to do this, and the method I'm going to recommend was provided by the Knitmore Girls on their podcast several years ago. It involves a few steps that anyone can easily do in their kitchen, and it only takes a few minutes of your time. So what you want to do is first dissolve 1 teaspoon of citric acid in hot water, then mix with about 3 to 4 cups of tepid water. Second, soak the yarn in this solution for 10 minutes. Third, press the water out of the yarn, put it in a plastic bag or plastic wrap, and microwave it for 2 minutes on high. Fourth, allow the yarn to cool, then soak in some wool wash like soak or eucalan for 15 minutes. If the dye is still bleeding, repeat the process. And lastly, let the yarn dry. Now, I've used this method many times and have never had a problem with yarn dye bleeding after doing it, so hopefully this will help with your yarn issue. And one last thing, in case you're wondering where to get citric acid, you can usually find it in the canning section of your grocery store, or you can order it online, and I'll include a link for that in the information box below as well. And thank you to Karen and Tanya for asking these questions. If you have a question that you'd like me to answer in a future video, leave it for me in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Well, we haven't been in the laboratory here at Ewe University for a while, so I thought it was time we had a new lab test. And something that I've wanted to do for some time now is test out the effectiveness of dryer balls. Now, dryer balls are spheres of either spiky plastic or felted wool that are thrown into a tumble clothes dryer along with a load of clothes. They're supposed to greatly reduce the drying time and thus save energy and money, and are also thought to remove static electricity and soften fabrics without chemicals like those in liquid fabric softener or dryer sheets. Now, I set out to test the effectiveness of both the spiky plastic and the felted wool dryer balls. I compared them to drying clothes with nothing at all added to the dryer, and I also did a load using tennis balls just to see how that would work. If you go online and do a Google search for dryer balls, you will find dozens and dozens of claims that dryer balls reduce drying time by 25% or more. Everyone seems to say this, and how do dryer balls do it? Well, according to thehomemadeexperiment.com, when you add dryer balls into your clothes dryer, the balls will get in between the towels and the clothing. The balls will separate and pull them apart with their weight. This in turn allows more hot air in and around your laundry, helping the dryer to heat your laundry more quickly and suck the evaporated water out of the dryer more efficiently. So according to this, the dryer balls work by separating and pulling the items in your dryer apart with their weight. What? Have you ever felt how light these things are? Just out of curiosity, I weighed them, and here's what I found. The felted wool dryer ball weighed 2 ounces. The spiky plastic one weighed 1.3 ounces, and the tennis ball weighed 1.6 ounces. And then I wondered how much a bath towel weighs, because it seems like a lot more than that. So I got out a bath towel and weighed it, and it was 1 pound, 10 ounces. I even weighed a hand towel, and that by itself was 5 ounces. So I'm supposed to believe that these dryer balls that weigh 2 ounces or less pull apart the items inside your dryer with their weight, when a bath towel weighs 10 times that much, and even a hand towel is over twice this weight. And keep in mind that these towels are going to weigh a lot more when they're wet. Now, I realize that there is likely some variability in bath towel weights, but I don't think any wet bath towels are going to weigh less than 2 ounces, which would allow the dryer balls to use their weight to physically separate them in your dryer. So I don't really think this is how the dryer balls are working. Now, another claim that is often made for the felted wool dryer balls is that because wool absorbs moisture, the dryer balls will soak up the water from your clothes, allowing them to dry faster. Now, that's actually a more plausible claim to me because wool is indeed a good moisture wick. I was curious to find out if it worked because I know that many fiber artists make their own felted wool dryer balls, and I think it's always nice to know that something handmade is also useful in life. Before I put the dryer balls to the test in my own experiment, I looked for other dryer ball tests to see what those results were. Now, I found one dryer ball enthusiast who tested the effectiveness of wool dryer balls using loads of towels in the dryer, and he dried 2 loads, one with dryer balls and one without. And he found that the load without dryer balls was done in 38 minutes, and the one with dryer balls was done in 30 minutes, which works out to a 27% shorter drying time with the felted wool dryer balls. So that's even better than the 25% claims. On the other hand, the other tests that I could find were done by independent consumer labs, and the results for those were not that impressive. Popular Mechanics did a test using the spiky plastic dryer balls and found no difference between drying with and without the dryer balls, except for increased noise caused by the balls clunking against the dryer drum. Consumer New Zealand, a nonprofit independent testing firm, tested both the felted wool and the spiky plastic dryer balls. They found no improvement in softness and no reduction in static electricity. They also found that drying time increased by 3 to 4 minutes for both types of drying balls when compared to drying clothes without a dryer ball. A British consumer watchdog organization called Which tested the spiky plastic balls and found that they didn't reduce drying time at all. In fact, dryer balls were listed in its list of top 10 duds, and they recommended that consumers steer clear of buying them if they care about the money in their pockets. Now, a Norwegian scientist conducted a test of felted wool dryer balls using a typical laundry load of socks, underwear, t-shirts, towels, jeans, and shirts. What he found was that the laundry dried 3 minutes faster without the dryer balls than with them, and the amount of electrical energy used was virtually identical. So, I added my own experiment with dryer balls to this mixed literature of dryer ball effectiveness. For my test, I ran 4 identical loads of laundry. In fact, they were exactly the same items in each load. Each load of clothes consisted of 10 men's 100% cotton t-shirts. Before placing each load in the dryer, I ran it through the same short rinse cycle on my washer. This cycle consists of a 5-minute rinse and then a spin cycle to remove as much water as possible. This way, the shirts would be equally wet when they went into the dryer. Now, for each load, I set the dryer on easy care, medium heat, and the less dry setting because it was a smaller load of clothes. Plus, I could line up the dial with the mark at that point. I also made sure that the dryer's lint filter was clean for every load, so differences in the filter fullness didn't affect the outcome. I used 2 of the same type of dryer ball in each of the test loads. And finally, I waited several hours in between dryer loads so that the dryer was completely cool and there was no residual heat from a previous load, which might have impacted the drying time of the next load. Now, my dryer is nothing fancy, but like probably most dryers here in the US, it does have an automatic sensor that detects when the clothes are dry and turns off at that point. Okay, so first I put the shirts in the dryer alone with no dryer balls or anything else added. I started the dryer and timed how long it took for the dry cycle to finish. The first load took 62 minutes to dry, and I was pretty surprised that it took an hour to dry a small load of 10 t-shirts. So this is the control condition to which everything else is going to be compared. Now, before we get to the rest of the experiment, let me ask you, what do you predict? What was the drying time for the felted wool dryer balls? Remember that the control condition took 62 minutes to dry. So do you think that the load with the wool dryer balls dried in A, 45 minutes, B, 55 minutes, C, 65 minutes, or D, 75 minutes? I'll give you the answer in a few moments, but first I'm going to tell you what happened with the other dryer balls. So for the next load, I included the plastic spiky dryer balls in the dryer with the t-shirts and timed how long it took to dry. That time was 56 minutes, so the plastic dryer balls shaved 6 minutes off the drying time. Next, I threw in 2 tennis balls with the load of shirts just to see how well they would work. And the drying time for this one was 57 minutes. So the tennis balls reduced the original drying time by 5 minutes. And then for the last load, I put in the felted wool dryer balls and started timing. And now for the moment of truth. Back to our quiz. Do you think the drying time for the load with the wool dryer balls was A, 45 minutes, B, 55 minutes, C, 65 minutes, or D, 75 minutes? Well, if you answered B, you are correct. This load dried in 55 minutes. So the wool dryer balls reduced the drying time by 7 minutes. To wrap up this experiment, let's take a look at the results as a whole. Drying the t-shirts alone took 62 minutes. Adding 2 plastic spiky dryer balls took 56 minutes, cutting the drying time by 6 minutes or 10%. Adding 2 tennis balls took 57 minutes, reducing the drying time by 5 minutes or 8%. And finally, adding 2 felted wool dryer balls took 55 minutes, decreasing the drying time by 7 minutes or 11%. So the question is, do dryer balls really work? Well, in this test, they did reduce drying time by 5 to 7 minutes compared to using nothing. On the other hand, this is not quite the 25% reduction in drying time made by the widespread claims. And the shortest drying time was still 55 minutes. And that, to me, seemed like a lot of energy to expend drying 10 t-shirts. Even if the wool dryer balls were effective, personally, I don't think they reduced the drying time a mind-boggling amount. If anything, I think this entire experiment made me want to use my outdoor clothesline even more. Now, what about static electricity? I didn't really set out to test static electricity because I wasn't sure how I would measure that. However, I did make a note of it on each load of laundry. And honestly, I didn't see any static electricity in any of the loads, even the one with no dryer balls. I didn't use any dryer sheets or anything like that, and the t-shirts came out dry and completely static free every time. So I didn't observe any difference in static electricity among all the loads in this test. Another thing that people ask about is the noise. Do the dryer balls make a lot of noise when they're in the dryer? Well, in my dryer, they thumped around a little bit, but really it wasn't that bad. I didn't have any way of measuring the noise level, but I found that the balls were loudest right at the beginning of the drying cycle. Once the dryer got going, the balls didn't make much noise. You would hear a little thump once in a while, but it wasn't super loud or anything. So this was not a big deal for me. I didn't have a problem with the noise. Overall, I think the jury is still out. It seems that some tests are coming back with dryer balls making no difference, and some are finding that they do reduce drying time in various amounts. And in the one test, dryer balls even increase drying time. I'm still a little skeptical since my results showed that the dryer balls reduced drying time a little bit. This wasn't that earth-shattering, and I probably won't bother with using dryer balls in the future. Like I said, after conducting this experiment, I think I'm more motivated than ever to use Mother Nature to dry my clothes and just hang everything out on the clothesline for free rather than taking up to an hour to dry 10 t-shirts in an electric dryer. Okay, so that wraps up our test of dryer ball effectiveness. I hope you found it interesting and useful, and I'll leave it up to you as to whether you want to call dryer balls efficient and valuable, and you can make up your own mind as to whether you want to spend the money purchasing them or spend the time making them. I am curious as to your thoughts on this experiment. What did you think of the dryer ball experiment? Do you consider the reduction in drying time significant enough for you to use them? Do you enjoy using them for other reasons? Let me know in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Well, that brings us to the end of today's show. I hope you enjoyed today's topic of testing dryer ball effectiveness. If you have any questions about today's show, or if you have an idea for a product test or another show topic, please don't hesitate to leave your thoughts or questions in the comment section below. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I'll see you in the next video. For next time, I thought I would talk a little bit about the psychological benefits of knitting, or the fiber arts in general. This is a topic that I covered a few years ago in my Ewe University audio podcast, but I thought I would look into any new research and give you an update on some new studies that have investigated the relationship between the fiber arts and well-being. I get a lot of questions about this topic, so I have a feeling it is something that many of you might be interested in. So I hope you come back and join me next time. And until then, have a sparkly week.